Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how I painted the Bullgor from the Beasts of Chaos using mostly contrast paints. And here's the Bullgor we're going to be painting in this video, and I'll go through step by step exactly how I did it. But if you want to see how I made and painted the base, then there is a separate video on that, so you can check that video out, and that's on my channel already too. So let's get started, and to prime this miniature I use the Citadel colour Wraith Bone undercoat, and this is great for contrast paints, and I use this for most of my models, so I can highly recommend going with this method to prime your model. I'll put a list in the description of all the paints we use in this video, so they'll be super easy to find, and the brush I mostly use is a number 2 synthetic Kolinsky brush, which is perfect, but I do use a larger brush in this video, as you'll see as we go through. So here he is, all primed, the base is completed, and he's ready to go, and we're going to start with a contrast Fyreslayer flesh. And you can see here I've got 2 size brushes, so I don't know what size this big one is, but I just put it next to the number 2 so you could see. But here this is going to hold a lot more paint, and it's going to make it a lot easier to get a nice even coat of this contrast paint all over these large areas of skin that we can see on the Bullgor. And so you can see here with just one stroke I'm almost covering a whole section there. So I'm not putting a lot of paint on the brush though, and I just want to have an even coat all over. I will be putting a shade over this later on. This is really to give us the colour and a little bit of kind of shadow in those recesses. So I do tend to start and end my brush stroke where I want most of the paint to build up, and then over those smoother areas I try and do some nice neat brush strokes, and then if there's too much paint like pooling, I'll just push and pull it around so it ends up going exactly where I want it to go. But it's such a great paint, this contrast paint. It really wants to go into those recesses naturally, and the larger areas it'll kind of settle a lot thinner, and so give you that idea that there is a highlight and a different kind of shade as well in those recesses. So it's perfect for stuff like this, but on larger areas it can be a bit tricky. So I find using the big brush does give a really nice even coat, and it really helps it, because once it starts to dry you've really got to leave it alone, otherwise you get like little stain marks, so you don't want that. And if you use a small brush it would just take such a long time to cover this kind of area of skin. So definitely use a bigger brush and you'll get some much better results painting larger models like this with contrast paints. And so I just continue all over the model, picking out all those skin areas, even the face. I'm just going to do it in this one colour, and I'm putting a little bit more paint in the areas where we've got lots of creases. So you can see here around the mouth, we do want to have that a lot darker in those recesses, also the eye socket too, and underneath where the armour meets the arm, it'd be nice to have a little bit of shade there too. So I'm just being a little bit more generous, again just pushing and pulling that paint around, and you've got lots of control. And with a large brush like this, the amount of paint you're going to put on the model, it's not going to dry super quick, so you've got plenty of time to really work it into where you want it to go. But you can see I'm not completely flooding the area here, and when I do have a lot of paint on the model I'm moving it around continuously. So really don't flood it. You really don't need to for this technique. Sometimes you do if you like wet blending, but for this we just want a nice even coat, as you can see here. And now when this is completely dried, I took some Agrax Earthshade, and I've used this because I want it to be a little bit browner. So I really want to go with a brown tone on the skin here. So again, nice even coat, use that big brush, and this works much the same as the contrast paint, but it seems to be a little bit thinner, and you do have a little bit more time to work with it before it starts to dry. So I'm going all over, again start and end my brush strokes where I want most of that paint to build up in those recesses, and then just push it around until you're happy with how it's settling. And then once you've got it in place, leave it alone and let that paint dry and do the work. Then I'm going to take some black Templar, and this is going to be for all the fur and all the hair on the model. And on my regular Doombulls I'm going with a Cygor brown, but this model I'm going to be proxying as a Doombull, and he's going to be in my Warcry warband as part of the campaign. So I wanted to make him a little bit different to the others, and that's why he's on this large raised base. And I thought if I give him the black fur and the black hair, then that's going to certainly make him stand out from the rest, and also make him a little bit meaner. So the Doombull's certainly looking good with his black hair, so I've run with that idea here. I could also use him if I wanted to as a Doombull still, no problem, but it just gives me the option of differentiating between my other Bullgors, because I've got 2 others that are going to be on my roster for the campaign. So here, much the same, although these furry areas tend to suck up a lot more paint, so I am being a little bit more generous with the paint, but just working it in and colouring all those areas. Then I'm going to take some base paint, some Leadbelcher, and I'm going to paint all the metallic parts of the metal. And here I'm only giving it one coat. I'm not too worried about having this like really solid or dark. I'm using it straight out the pot and I'm not watering it down. So I think one coat is going to be plenty, because we're going to do some other techniques over the top anyway. And the Leadbelcher is quite thick paint, well pigmented, and so I find one coat is enough for me for these. I'm not sure if you could wet this down or not. So, you know, some people might want to do a couple of coats, a couple of thinner coats, but for me, I prefer to just go with one, because I am looking for a tabletop ready, quite quick way of painting. So if this speeds up the process, you know, that drying time in between layers, then one coat is always going to be better for me for the standard I'm looking for, which is a good tabletop ready standard. So I'm just continuing to block all that in on these like chains here, this chainmail kind of skirt that he wears. This takes a lot of paint, so I'm really almost stippling it to get it in amongst it. I'm really using quite an old brush that I've used a lot now, so this isn't in perfect condition. This Army Painter Wargamer character brush has seen some action, and it's certainly a good brush to use for that kind of thing. Next, I'm going to take some base paint, Wraithbone this time, and I'm going to tidy up all the areas. So anywhere I've gone over by mistake, I'm just going to clean that up and make it really nice and neat and tidy. This is key to a good standard tabletop ready model, I think. Having those areas you're going to block in nice and neat, so all the lines are crisp. And then once that dries, I'll take some contrast Gryph Hound Orange and give a nice generous coat to the backside of this skirt piece that he wears, and give it a nice even coat all over. And this is going to be coated again later on once this is dried with a red, but I find that doing orange first leaves a really nice finish, and it also gives you a kind of orangey highlight coming through on the most raised areas, so it's a really good technique. Next, I'm taking some Snakebite leather, and this is going to go on just the very thin straps that are holding on these little bones and this little rune on the antlers, and also just on those horns he's wearing around the belt buckle as well. So I'm just picking those out. On my other Bullgors, I use this for all their belts and everything, but with this guy, because of the colour of the skin's a little bit browner, I'll use a different colour on all the leather and strap. But I thought for the straps, this would be good just to have a little different colour mixed in there. And so also on the stitching for his little wrist guard here, this kind of amulet, I'm just painting those stitches in the leather too. Then I'm going to take contrast Wyldwood, really dark, nice brown colour, and this is going to be for all the leather parts of the model now. So this is where I'm picking out this guard, this wrist guard, I'm picking out the belt and all those sections that we want to be that nice dark brown. And Wyldwood's really great for a nice dark leather effect. Snakebite leather is perfect, it's really good for pouches and things. But if you want something a little bit darker, then I think Wyldwood is a really good choice. And having this dark wood is going to work really nicely with the different colours and tones we've got going on with the skin and all the other areas of the model. Then I'm going to take some Skeleton Horde and Basilicanum Grey. I'm going to make sure these are open at the same time, and I'm going to start doing all the hooves and the horns. And I'm looking to do a little wet blend here, so I've been quite generous with the Skeleton Horde. This dries really pale, so you can put quite a lot on and it's not going to be dark when it's finished. But it does go well in the recesses where it builds up. But I want it to be like a grey kind of colour as well. So here you can see once I put that Skeleton Horde on, I'm straight in with the Basilicanum Grey, and I'm going to go just where the hoof meets the skin and put a little dot of that grey on there. Then I'm going to wipe my brush on some kitchen towel, dip it back in the Skeleton Horde, and then just start to blend those colours in, dragging that grey outwards from where it meets the skin to the tips of the hooves, and then that's going to give us a nice fade between the Skeleton Horde colour and the grey, and this makes it look aged, a lot more hoof-like or horn-like, and gives a little bit of texture to these flat areas. I think it makes a huge difference. You could just put all Skeleton Horde or even just go all grey, but on a big model like this I think we could just do this little wet blend technique. It doesn't take long. I'm literally letting the video run here so you can see how long it does take in real time. Just under a minute or so, and we can get a nice technique that really brings these horns and hooves to life. And so I'm going to copy this technique on all the other parts. So on the horns here, I've done a nice coat of that Skeleton Horde again, and then while it's still wet, I go in with a little dot of Basilicanum Grey, back to the Skeleton Horde, and then just gradually blend them together, dragging that colour out so it's mixing nicely and fading out, going from dark where the root of the horn is to a bit paler at the end of the horn. And then after that, I'm just going to go over all the skulls and all the little teeth and horns he's got hanging off him. Okay, now our orange is completely dry, so I'm going to take 1 part Flesh Tearer Red and 1 part Contrast Medium and mix that together thoroughly, and I'm going to give it a nice generous coat of that over the orange that we painted previously. And really important that that orange is dry, so make sure it's really dry before you do this. And this is going to allow that orange to come through, which will give a little bit of a better highlight. Orange is a great highlight for red, but it also gives us that nice deep red colour that we like for the Beasts of Chaos. Then I'm taking some Null Noil, and this is going over anything we painted with that Leadbelcher earlier. Again, make sure that Leadbelcher is completely dry, and try and work that Null Noil into those recesses. It will naturally want to go in there, but just give it a helping hand, pushing it around, and then off the more raised areas, just move it along. Then we're going to take some technical paint called Typhus Corrosion, and this is a real gritty paint that leaves a really aged, battle-worn look to any metal. And again, make sure that that Nuln Oil Shade is completely dry before you do this. And here I've got a really scruffy brush because I find this sandy texture can kind of ruin the brushes a little bit. So I've got an old scruffy brush, and I'm just stippling this Typhus Corrosion over the metal. I'm leaving the very edge of the axe without any on because I want that to be nice and sharp looking, a bit more shiny, and so I'm leaving that where it is. But all over these other parts, I'm just stippling it all along, try and work a little bit more into the recesses. And then once that's dried, we'll take some Stormhost silver. Then I'll get my makeup brush here, a very vegan brush with some super soft bristles. I'll put some paint on the bristles, then work it into some kitchen towel to get that in there, and then try and get as much paint as I can off on a little piece of card and on the kitchen towel. And then this is perfect for highlighting. I'm going to start with that sharp edge of the axe, and I'm just going to run my brush down vertically and then also across horizontally, trying to use the side of the brush just to like drag along for an edge highlight, and you can see how that works there. And I'll also just put a little bit on the flat parts just to break that Typhus Corrosion up a little bit. And so where I'm dragging it here, I'm almost going to just dot it on to the other parts just to break it up a bit. And then catch all those edges of the handle and the most prominent bits. Here you can see I'm going back to the axe just to make it stand out a little bit better in the center there. And then on the shoulder guard here, just catch again those spikes, and I want that large flatter area or rounded area that's going to catch some natural highlight. So I did a little bit of dry brushing there just to really emphasize that that's where most of the light's going to catch, and then work my way all around, getting all those prominent areas, the tips of the little horns there, the horns and on the face guard, and just really making sure every bit is covered. And there we go, there's our Bullgor all painted to a tabletop ready standard with mostly contrast paints, some technical paints and a little bit of dry brushing. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I really love these models, even though they're quite old sculpts. I think they've got loads of character and they're going to be an awesome addition to my Warcry warband. So I can't wait to get this guy on the battlefield and into action. But you can see here that red's come out really nice. I love the aged metalwork from that Typhus Corrosion. It's a really great, quick, easy technique to do. The skins come out really great for that large area with the duo of contrast paint and Agrax Earthshade, and you can see the metalwork there with that nice highlight really brings it to life. But don't forget, if you want to see how to make the base, then there's a video for that on my channel too, and you can also see how to paint the Great Bray Shaman if you've got your own Beasts of Chaos army. But I'll put links to all the paints we've used in this video in the description below, and there'll be links to Element Games where you can save up to 20%. Then there'll be affiliate links, but it won't cost you anything extra, and for every sale made through a link I get a small commission which helps me develop the channel. So thanks so much for supporting me and the channel, I really appreciate it. If you like this kind of content and would like to support the channel, then please check out my Patreon page, and thanks to everyone who's joined so far. It's really awesome. We hang out on Discord, talk about the hobby, share ideas and help each other out, and you'll get some perks there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put a link in the description and it'll be great to see you there. I hope you enjoyed the video and this gave you an idea how you might like to paint your Bullgor or Doombull, and I'd love to hear what you think about this contrast method, so please join in the comment section below. It'd be awesome to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.